Just wanted to add this little prelude before we get into the video that the idea for this was actually taken from a comment that I got on the last pet video that I got. Someone commented asking what talents I recommend for a death pet. And so this video will kind of cover talents that I recommend and also pet bodies I recommend for free-to-play wizheads. So yeah, let's get into it. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another pet video. The last one did pretty well, where I talked about the new best strategy for creating pets in Wizard101 that will let you get 2.0 perfect stat, perfect pools on any pet body. So there's a lot of talk about pets. Oh, you should get a pet. You should, get these stats on these pets. But I don't feel like anyone really talks about what kind of pets you should be making in the game. And I've kind of boiled this down to 3 main pets. There are a couple other pets you can make that I'll talk about in this video, but basically what I'm going to be going over is what pets you should be going for in Wizard101. And so the first one is, I'll probably throw up some graphics or some stuff, and I have examples here. The first one is what is called a triple double pet. And essentially what that means is it has 3 damages and 2 resists. Technically, this pet isn't a perfect triple double, and that's because it has this talent right here with 3 damage. This is called Storm Boon. Technically, if you want to have a perfect triple double, you would have Mighty instead of this. But basically what a triple double entails is your school's dealer, your school's giver, pain giver, and then spell proof and spell defy. And so let me equip this and show you in this menu is pain giver, proof, defy, boon, and dealer. A lot of my suggestions will apply when it comes to soloing content. I pretty much try to solo as much as I can when it comes to questing. Obviously, when I'm farming gear, I'm not going to be solo farming. But when I'm questing content or whatever new content comes out, I try to solo as much as possible. The triple double is the ideal pet for that as it gives 15 resist, but it's not the most optimal when it comes to something like pierce or maximizing your damage. And that is where something like a quad damage proof pet might come into effect, where you have 4 damages. You have your school's dealer, your school's giver, pain giver, proof, and then either your school's boon or pain bringer. And so this pet, you can't see it in here, but it also has this talent called Mighty. And Mighty is a selfish talent that increases a stat on this right side here. And these stats on the right side determine the numbers that these talents actually have. And so this pet is close to a max stat, which is 255 strength, 250 intellect, 260 agility, 260 will, and 250 power. This pet obviously has 256 will. The numbers still will give me the 7 giver, the 11 dealer, the 11 proof, etc, etc. And so this pet prioritizes less on the resist and prioritizes more on the damage. However, you're still missing a little bit of pierce. And so my third recommendation, and the pet that I've come around to quite a lot more, is a triple damage proof breaker pet. And so what this is essentially is your school's dealer, your school's giver, pain giver, spell proof, and then armor breaker. And then if you notice, kind of like the other pet before this on the balance, this also has Mighty. And so again, Mighty is a super important talent. I would honestly say it's one of the most important talents when it comes to making pets in 2025 or going into 2026 as well. I would say there are 3 talents that you want your pet to have when it comes to either soloing content, even doing team combat content, and that is Mighty, your school's dealer, and then armor breaker. And so that just gives you the most damage and the most pierce in one talent. As you can see, Death Giver gives 7 and Dealer gives 11. Similarly, Armor Breaker gives 4, while Armor Piercer gives 2. And that's even with a Mighty talent. So Breaker is usually 3%, and with Mighty it gets you 4. Piercer is 2. Those are the 3 main pets I think you should be gunning for when it comes to your solo content. And so I'm going to recap. That is a triple double, which is triple damage, double resist. Quad damage proof, which is 4 damages and then spell proof, and also Mighty. And then triple damage proof breaker, which is 3 damages, spell proof, armor breaker, and then Mighty. And if it wasn't clear already, on a triple damage, double resist pet like this one, you would want Mighty instead of boon. And so that would increase your damage by 3, which is what boon would do. But in addition, it increases your resists by 1. So I would get not only the same damage, but I would also get 2 extra resist. And we can see that here with this mighty pet giving +1 to spell proof over this one. However, we can go even further with this idea. When it comes to doing team content where you want to prioritize as much damage as possible, especially if you're on someone like a storm or a fire or even a myth, you want to maximize your damage. And so that can be done with a quint damage pet. And this is done with 5 damages, which is your school's dealer, your school's giver, pain giver, your school's boon, and then pain bringer. And then as well as a mighty or a mighty adjacent talent like this one I have, which is called Cautious. There's another one called Thinking Cap, which increases your will by 65. And then we can take this even further. Now this one is a fail, but it's my only one that is semi like this. But you can make a quad damage breaker mighty pet, which if you recall from a couple minutes ago when I talked about how you want mighty on a triple double because it increases your resist and it would cover the same damage. If I were to have a quad damage breaker pet with mighty, I would get +4 damage and the +1 pierce. So instead of having this pain bringer, which is only 4 damage, I would get that extra 4 damage through increasing these talents while also getting the +1 pierce through the armor breaker. But again, I'm going to let you know that I would only consider this really for optimizing your damage because you lose out on a lot of resist when it comes to making these kind of pets, which is why I would only be using this pet when I'm doing team content where I'm hitting and just going to be frenzying and, you know, doing bunyips or something like that. When it comes to solo content, I would be using something more like a triple double or this proof pet with double pierce, even though it sacrifices some damage. As we can see that there's 18 damage here, and then there's 18, 25, 29, 33 damage here. So you're sacrificing 15 damage for 11 resist and 6 pierce. And this is just one example. So that kind of covers everything I want to talk about when it comes to questing pets or doing team content pets where you want to maximize your stats, your damages, your resists, your pierce, etc. But there are a couple other auxiliary utility pets that will just help your account overall. The first major one of these is an energy pet. Now, I will say there are 2 ways to go about making an energy pet. It's either you make it on a Dapper Corgi or you make it on literally any other pet body. And ultimately, the only difference is 8 energy. Now, luckily, Dapper Corgis aren't an exclusive pet, so you can hatch for them. It's just a little bit rare, but you can also farm it from Barkingham Palace. I believe it's a wooden key boss. But again, you don't need to make it on a Dapper Corgi unless you want to completely optimize your energy. You'll get the 8 extra energy from that. But that is not the only way to make an energy pet. As you see on my life, I just have a regular Piggle that I dyed a different color, and it has the 4 energy talents and then also some fishing because I wanted to fish on this character, so I got both fishing. But these are the 4 energies that you want in an energy pet. You got big energy, regular energy, ultra energy, and then huge energy. And then also you can get a jewel for each of these. And if you're curious on how to get a lot of these pretty quickly, I would say farm the Forbidden Library Gauntlet. The first boss and the last boss can both drop energy jewels, and they drop pretty easily. So if you just farm for like one of the robes or something, you'll definitely get a lot of these. But there are a ton of energy talent pets in the kiosks that you can hatch with if you can't find someone outside or in the Discord. Pets can get up to 6 talents. They can manifest 5, and then you can affix a jewel. So what other talents should you have on an energy pet? Now, this isn't optimal, but for my life, I have double fishing. The most optimal, however, is Maycast, Summon Pixie, and then this 10% gold. And, you know, you might have some other people say like, oh, a scouting talent is more optimal than the 10% gold. But I mean, that I feel like the availability of this type of pet is a lot more common than a good pet with a good pool pet that has all 4 energies and then also the scout talent. So I would say overall that this is your best talent manifestation for an energy pet. And so what this Maycast Summon Pixie does is when you're gardening and you say, let's say you have a plot of couch potatoes and you use the water taking care needs spell. When you use that, this pet, if you have it equipped, has a chance of casting the Maycast Summon Pixie spell, which will increase, it'll be another boost for your couch potatoes for 48 hours. So it's just another utility that can help your couch potatoes grow faster and get you more mega snacks faster. And then the gold miner, I believe gold miner only works when it comes to drop gold. I don't think it applies to selling things in like the bazaar, but either way, it's just another slot to fill, and it gives you the 10% gold I believe the gold does apply to if you're harvesting your couch potatoes. Like if you're harvesting a 69 plot and you have this pet equipped, I do believe you get 10% gold on each of that harvest, which is another good benefit. Hey, this is me a couple days later, but there was one other auxiliary pet type that I forgot to talk about, and it's one that only comes up every so often, but I think eventually when you get your account to a certain level, you want to start doing this, and this is Decathlon. On my life, which is my main event guy, I have 2 Decathlon pets, and that is a Leaf Storm trained pet and then also a Frozen Kraken trained pet. Now, Frozen Kraken is most of the time, 6 out of 7 of the times, Frozen Kraken will be the one you want to use. The only one you don't want to use it in is the Ice Decathlon. And for that, I have a Leaf Storm trained pet, but you can also make a Link pet, which I think for Ice Decathlon is a little bit better. I just made this Leaf Storm one because I wanted to be different. But similar to the energy pets, you don't really care what pet body it's on, but there are a few pet bodies in the kiosk that are the most common for these Decathlon pets. And I would say it's the Tabby Cat, the Life Ghoul, and then maybe one other one. So we can just do a quick little look at Frozen Kraken, and then let's do energizing. So there's armaments, there's an Ice Kraken, there's the Life Ghoul that I was talking about, there's a Death Bat, Piranha, Gobbler Ball, more Kraken. But basically, for Decathlon, you just want as many Maycasts as possible in addition to one Will Cast. And for Decathlon, I have this Bracefy, which the Maycast brace does work, so I do use that. Otherwise, I'd probably use like a shield type of one, or maybe this Maycast tower shield, just depending on what it is. But yeah, I'm not the biggest expert on Decathlon, but I would say the best order of Maycasts would be Healing Current, Fairy, Sprite Queen, and then either Unicorn or Sprite. And then in addition, you would want your Willcast Frozen Kraken, or for Ice Decathlon, you'd want your Willcast Link or Power Link. I forget which of the two it is, but I'm pretty sure it's just normal Link. So technically, neither of these are like a perfect Decathlon pet because I don't have Fairy on my Frozen Kraken, and I have Leaf Storm instead of Link, but these make do enough for me, as evident by my Decathlete decks. So I'm still just making my way through the Decathlons as they come up, and these are the pets I have. All right, back to me from a few days ago. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is pet bodies. And I kind of got into it a little bit when I was talking about energy pets when it comes to the Dapper Corgi, but this can also apply to your triple doubles or your quad proof damages. And that comes down to what pet body you want to use. Now, I think for a lot of people, they care more about the aesthetic than they care about the utility, and that's completely fine. You just hatch with whatever pet body you think looks cute. But for me, I like a lot of utility. So on my ice, for example, before I got the hamsters, I was using a Cryo Elf. And that's because they gave me item card Sharpened Blades, which gave me an extra blade utility. But then once I unlocked the hamster through Decathlon, it gives me one of those Sharpened Blades and then also an additional extra blade. It's a pet blade. I'm going to say overall, if you want to maximize your utility, I think the hamsters are your best free-to-play option. If you have a relatively high-level wizard or multiple wizards that are like level 50 or something, you could get these pretty easily through grinding the Decathlon. The Decathlon comes around, I believe, the second Tuesday of every month. You'll see it in the special events tab. Other than that, I think the main thing you want is just a pet that has a blade. And there is one for every school. Like for fire, you'd want the Kookaburra. It gives you a blade, a 100% accuracy meteor strike, and then a power link. For ice, you may want the Ice Dactyl, which gives a blade and a tower shield. Or you'd want the Frosty Eye, which also gives a blade and a 100% accuracy blizzard. For storm, you may want the Clamoring Gulcher, which gives a blade and a windstorm. You can go on and on. For myth, you'd probably want to go for the Enigmatic Gulcher, which gives a blade and a mass trap. For life, you probably want to go for the Kookaburra because it gives a blade and a leaf storm. For death, you could go for the Acid Raincore, which gives a blade and a supercharge. Or you could even go for the Gulcher, which gives an item card Feint and an item card Blade. Or even the Gloomy Eye, which gives a blade and a 100% Colossifrog. And balance has a ton of options. You could go for the Blaze Fox, which gives an item card Balance Blade. You could go for the Enchanted Armament, which gives you like 4 item card Sharpened Blades. You could go for the Bowl or the Gobbler Ball, which gives you more item card blades. You could go for the Kookaburra, which gives you a item card Balance Blade and a Sandstorm. Or you could even go for the Opossum that gives a blade and a Blade Storm. The point is, when you care about utility, you want to look for pets that give you extra buffs. The blade on my Ice class pet, this blue one, is different than the one that's just in my spellbook. The item card Sharpen that it gives me is different than the regular Sharpen that I have in my spellbook. So let's go over what we talked about today in one big recap, and then I will let you guys go. So there are 3, maybe even going into 4 or 5 main pets that you want to look at that will fit your needs the most. And that is a triple double, which prioritizes the most resist and the least damage. You have a quad damage proof, which prioritizes the most damage and resist in a balanced sort of way while sacrificing pierce. And then you have a triple damage proof breaker pet, which has the most balance between damage, resist, and pierce. And then going off from that idea, when it comes to team content where you want to maximize your damage as much as possible, you have quint damage, and then you have quad damage breaker, which don't have any resist, and they prioritize the most damage and the most pierce. Outside of pets with raw stats, you want to look for pets that have energy talents, and this will give you more energy when it comes to cantrip farming for more spell elements or gardening. And there are 4 energy talents. You want big energy, huge energy, and ultra energy. And then the last 2 spots you can kind of fill for yourself, but my recommendation is the gold and the Maycast summon gardening pixie spell. And then the last thing we talked about was what pet body to go for. For those who just care about aesthetics, go for the pet that you find the cutest or the pet that you think goes with your outfit the best. But if you care about utility, you want to get a pet that has a blade or a sharpen or a feint, and something that will help you buff. And for me, the best free-to-play option are the school hamsters that come from the Decathlon event. Outside of that, there are plenty of other options in the kiosk. You have your Gulchers, your Kookaburras. There are a range of options with the opossums, the bowls. With that being said, I hope you guys learned something a little bit more about the pet system in Wizard101 and use this knowledge for your own pet making and your own questing. And I will see you guys next time.